actions, and it's paying the people who are doing this in the coin itself. Hey guys, Danny Johnson here, and today we're going to be going somewhere that you've probably never been to before. You're going to see something that I bet you haven't seen before. Very few people have. It's going to be in a discreet location that I'm really not allowed to talk about, but we'll get started here. I'll probably have to put on a blindfold or something like that, but it should be pretty interesting. Stay tuned. Okay, this is something we're going out into the darkness of night. So where are we going? I haven't been down this road before.
Actually, it's better if you don't know.
Okay.
Probably turn the camera off.
Okay. Alright. Here she is. This here is crypto mining. Okay, so what we have here is mining cryptocurrency. If you've heard of cryptocurrency, you've probably heard of Bitcoin, and this specific setup is mining Ethereum. And so each of these processors are made up of basically game cards, and they're processing all the transactions that are taking place every time somebody is buying and selling Ethereum. You can feel a lot of heat coming off of these. They're running a ton of power and figuring out different mathematical equations for the processing, and as far as I understand, it's also recording everything to the blockchain, which is basically a ledger system that's recording all the transactions on computers all over the world, so that if one of them were to go down or be hacked, for example, that the rest of them could then verify which transactions were proper. So, for example, if you were going to go break into a bank, and try to hack a bank, you're going after one building, but imagine if you were going after a whole town and trying to break into every house and steal every dollar when it's been recorded, on everybody's personal ledger. Maybe that's not a very good example, but that's basically what it's getting at. So all of these are computing the transactions, and it's paying the people who are doing this in the coin itself. So they will receive a fraction of the Ethereum for doing this. And Ethereum is now the $500–600 range is what each coin is worth. And so, they would be paid out a fraction of a coin at that rate. Now, you can also go onto coin exchanges and you can buy and sell more of the coins, and you can trade them for other coins. So, even though this is Ethereum, you could also basically be paid out in Bitcoin. Okay, so as we mentioned before, you can feel the heat coming off of each of these. So how much power is each one of these consuming?
They're about 800 watts continuous on this 6 card rig.
Okay, so you have 6 cards on one
So
rig.
This one has 5, so it's going to be a little less. I think, what are these cards run at? About 8. These are more efficient than some of my rigs.
We have these set at about 83 watts per card. We actually use a program called Simple Miner that regulates the power output of each one, so it just really helps with saving power. AMD cards are gonna run a lot more wattage.
And where we live, we have cheaper power. Lots of places that are, I think, average throughout the country is about 10 cents a kilowatt, right? And we're for residential at about 5.9 cents, which is really pretty good. And if you're at a commercial location, it's even less, like about 30 cents or something, I think. But the end result is, for residential use, each one of these 6 card rigs will consume about what? I think 60. It was about $60 a month or something like that.
About that.
Something like that. 40 to 60 bucks a month.
About $40-50.
Yeah, I have one that has 8 cards and they're not as efficient, so one of mine uses quite a bit more. But these are all NVIDIA cards, right?
Yeah, all these are GTX 1060
And
cards.
they're known for being a lot more efficient than AMD cards, which are more powerful but use more energy, so there's a trade-off.
There's roughly 110 GPUs here.
And were you saying there's a way you have to be approved? You build one of these, you set it all up, and you have to be approved into their system?
Yeah, it's a very extensive approval process.
No,
I'm just kidding. No, actually, you just download a program and you're good to go.
Okay.
yeah, there's really no approval of any kind.
So,
It's actually insanely. It's actually so simple. When I first did it, I wondered if I did it right. Like I thought there had to be more to it than that. You don't have to enter any of your personal information whatsoever. You just need a wallet address, basically, which you can get in like 2 minutes. Which you also don't have to put any personal information in, and you enter that in the mining program, and you're good to go.
now, do these pay out the same amount each month, or is it is it different depending on how cryptos are doing, or?
No, it's going to fluctuate depending on the difficulty of the network, which that varies a lot. Generally, it goes up each month and it gets more and more difficult. So, on average, you mine a little bit less each month with each rig. But in theory, the price of the coin is supposed to offset that. So, these should be more and more profitable. It's not always the case, but that's how the network was built.
And like you were saying earlier, these mine Ethereum. They can be set up to mine other things. They don't have to exclusively mine Ethereum. People with this same setup can mine other things, but these just happen to do Ethereum because that's what they're set up to do. And Ethereum, when I started, which is about the same time he started, was about $180, $190, and it went up to what, $1,300 or something, $1,300 or $1,400, and now it's back down to $500. But yet the difficulty level has increased. So theoretically, every time one of these cards is added, the difficulty goes up just a little bit. At least that's my understanding of it, and it seems to be true. So because as more and more people buy these things, it's kind of like a built into the system to make it so that it won't get run away.
And you'll need more and more to keep up with it, right? So there is a demand for people creating these, and parts alone. How much would one of these rigs cost?
GPUs are very inflated right now, if you can even get them, and so you're roughly $2,300 to $2,500 for each rig.
Okay.
That's a good price.
That'd be
if you bought them one at a time and got the best price you could possibly get right now.
Yeah, you'd be more like $3,000 to $3,200 a rig if you wanted to just buy one right now.
They're selling 6 packs of these, where you can buy just 6 of these GPUs, just the GPUs alone, and they're getting and sometimes like $4,000 for these exact same things. I don't know who's crazy enough to buy them, but people are doing it.
Uh-huh.
'Cause
And how much would it pay out per, or when would you finally break even?
At that price, it'd take over a year.
Take about a year for it to
At
break
today's price and today's difficulty.
even. Uh-huh. And so at today's price and difficulty, then you could say that it could earn about 4,000 a year. Then, if it's going to cost 4,000.
You know, it really depends.
it's just all over the place.
Yeah, the currency goes way up and down, but really,
It was as little as about 5 to 6 months. It's as much as probably 13.
So are you tempted at points just to say, okay, we're switching over to mine Bitcoin now, or is there?
you can't mine Bitcoin with these. Well, you
You
can. It
could.
just wouldn't be effective.
You would lose money every month.
Yeah, you would never make any money at all.
Okay.
You would be worse than not making any money.
So if there was a better performing cryptocurrency, would it be better to switch over to another one? If you were watching it each month and say,
Yeah,
hey,
it actually changes several times a day. If you're really on top of it and you wanted to spend the time, then yeah, you could make a little bit more money by changing the currency. But for ease of use, we just mine Ethereum only. We do have these set to dual mine, which Ethereum mines off of the memory clock, and then you can actually mine separate currency off of the core clock of these, which is really nice. But you don't really get too much of a benefit from it, but it is there.
And so a normal household, you'd basically be able to run one of these or two of these or three of them?
Each one in a normal household. See, we have the benefit of using three-phase power here, so you get about 73% more, equipment use for the same amperage. But if you're just on single-phase power, each one's going to run anywhere between 3 and 7 amps continuous, depending on if it's wired up for 240 volts or 120.
You could probably, my experience has been, you can get away with running 2 of these. You could probably run 2 of these. Well, you can definitely run at least 2 of them, of these 6-card rigs, on a 120 amp circuit.
Mm-hmm.
But safely probably 1 per 15 amp circuit. So you have to go around your house and figure out what outlets on what circuit and put only 1 or 2 per circuit max.
Unless you wire up a 30 to 50 amp breaker into somewhere like your garage, then you could do a lot more.
And the more of these that are built, it's really just helping the coin's transaction time. And so you're really not competing, or would you consider you're competing with each other since you both have?
They have what's called mining pools, and so there's thousands of these miners that are in a lot of these pools, and they just kind of split up the reward based on how the pool does. So really, you're not necessarily competing, but you are in an indirect sense.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, you're all driving up the difficulty. So every new person that comes on is hurting you a little bit, but it's impossible. There's nothing you can do about it. So you might it's more you're neither cooperating necessarily or adversarial. It is what it is. People are going to keep building these things as long as it's profitable, and the pool divvies up the profits. So early on, and you can still do this, you can do what's called solo mining, where you're actually trying to solve the problem yourself, or you're trying to solve, what's the word, the block. You're trying to solve the block yourself, but the odds of that are so low. You would need to have just a whole warehouse full of these to have any reasonable shot at doing it. And
Which
so,
we have.
yeah, so it could be profitable, but it's just risky. It's just like the gambling approach versus the slow and steady, where you're for sure going to get a payout every week. In the pool, do you still use the same pool?
Yeah,
so
I
Ethermine is the pool we both use, I think.
Yeah, I've considered switching to solo mining, so with this amount of equipment or a little bit more, it would almost be worth it because you have the potential of getting what's called an uncle, which is really cool. It's basically as of right now, it's about 3 ether that you would get as a bonus, so to say.
Wow. And would they change that bonus according to the price of Ethereum, or would they?
I'm not super versed with solo mining,
Uh-huh.
so I'm not really one to.
I thought it was just you got 1 ether, so I didn't even.
Maybe it's gone down to 1 because of the price that's on it now.
And each one of these, so the computing power is measured in mega hashes. Did we go through that already?
No, not yet.
So each one of these does about 140 to 144 mega hashes, depending on the type of the manufacturer of the card. Sometimes some of them, like these MSI ones, this is actually useful information for any of these. These MSI ones are kind of junky as far as I'm concerned, because they just don't. They're the same exact card, theoretically, but they just hash at lower rates. And I've noticed this with AMD cards too. Like some manufacturers just, for I don't know what they do to them, but they just are not as efficient. And these EVGA ones, you'll get another four or so mega hashes out of, which adds up when you're running 24/7, 365. Like any little bit more you can squeeze out of them, you want to do that because you're multiplying it by each number of rigs you have and everything.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily don't get the MSI 1060s. You really got to get what's available.
Yeah.
And they'll still make money, but
If you have a choice.
I would go with the EVGAs over the MSIs.
Yeah, if you see both of these available, and they're about the same price, or even if these are a little more, I'd get those.
Okay. Now, if somebody goes and buys an Ethereum coin, it has to record that they've purchased it over several ledgers, right? Or several
there has to be
confirmations onto the blockchain, and so these machines are also, would it be saying like this machine over here is one of those, and then one across the world might be a different one, or do you know? That's kind of a.
And that's one thing that we were talking about earlier is I do not understand what seems to be the arbitrary number of confirmations. Sometimes I've seen as little as 3, and I've seen as many as like 47, close to 50 on the similar size transaction. So I don't understand why sometimes it needs 3 and sometimes it needs 50. But
Yeah, I'm no expert on credit cards or anything like that, but when a credit card transaction's done, it's also recorded in some kind of a database.
Right.
And so this is
a lot different in the fact that all the whole blockchain is open source, but it's encrypted. So there's a certain level of being anonymous. That's not to say it's completely anonymous. You can still track it, but it's not like the credit card system where you can just call up Visa or MasterCard
and say, hey, I have a false charge or something like that.
Yeah.
To your knowledge, has any of the Bitcoins been hacked yet?
the actual ledger,
No, or any
No.
part of it?
but exchanges have been, and hundreds of millions of dollars have been stolen of Bitcoin in different currencies. But it's not because the underlying technology is weak; it's because the exchanges aren't guarding
More the business
Yeah,
itself, the
it's-
exchange, and there's several exchanges out there than the
it's
GDAX and
it'd be similar to like just U.S. dollars. I mean, there's nothing fundamentally wrong with U.S. dollars, but they get stolen all the time. It's just how well the institutions that are entrusted with them guard it. And if you got lax security procedures, then your institution's going to get hacked, and you're going to get whatever assets you have stolen, whether it's Bitcoin or dollars or diamonds or whatever.
cool. Well, that's super cool to see all these and running and doing all the little computations, whatever you'd call them. So, anyway, thanks for showing the channel this.
Sure. Yeah, anytime.
Let's go buy some Ethereum.